One of the most important roles in Elizabeth's Privy Council was her Secretary of State. This was a key position that was responsible for national defence, among many other areas. It was Sir Francis Walsingham that filled this role, operating as England's foremost spymaster. Francis was the son of William Walsingham, a successful lawyer who had been appointed to investigate the estates and finances of the corrupt Cardinal Wolsey under the reign of Henry VIII. As a result, the family rose to prominence, gaining great respect, wealth, and status. As a deeply committed Protestant, Walsingham had fled England under the reign of Mary I to avoid her widespread and brutal persecution. Upon Elizabeth's succession, Walsingham returned and was elected to her first Parliament, where he steadily rose through important positions. When Walsingham became Secretary of State in 1573, he understood the importance of reliable intelligence. Walsingham began to grow a network of spies and informants across Europe, as well as within Elizabeth's court, and played a vital role in discovering and preventing plots against her. Walsingham's network extended to every county in England, with each major town and city having a number of undercover agents and informers that were paid to provide information. Furthermore, Walsingham had agents across all major powers in Europe at this time. The network that Walsingham created placed his agents across many towns and cities in France, Spain, Germany, and Italy, and even further afield in Turkey and Morocco, all of which fed important information back to Walsingham regarding potential threats to Elizabeth's reign. It seemed as though little could happen across the known world during this period that Walsingham was not well informed upon. The messages he received were written in sophisticated cipher, and Walsingham worked incredibly long hours, reading every scrap of information. A further source of intelligence came from prisoners held in the Tower of London, who were questioned under torture to reveal the names of traitors and the details of their plots. Although by today's standards this is seen as barbaric, at the time it was viewed as a necessity by the state. When the Pope ordered Catholic priests to be smuggled into England to help undermine the Elizabethan settlement, they were hidden by Catholic families. Those who were captured were interrogated by Walsingham to reveal the plots they had been sent to execute. For example, John Hart was a captured Catholic priest who Walsingham had confined in the Tower in 1581. In fear for his life, Hart provided detailed intelligence of further plots and worked as a double agent for Walsingham in exchange for an official pardon for his treason. Under the reign of Elizabeth, almost 200 priests and those who concealed or supported them were tortured and publicly executed as traitors to the crown. Walsingham, however, did not favour the use of torture for fear of garnering sympathy for ecclesiastical traitors. A further tactic employed by Walsingham was the use of agent provocateurs. These were government spies placed within groups of plotters to encourage them to commit treason in order to gain intelligence, uncover their treachery, and arrest as many of the conspirators as possible. During the 16th century, European courts were filled with spies, informants, and double agents who fed important information back to their monarchs and paymasters. This was not a new development. However, their presence in England placed Elizabeth under increasing danger. A Florentine banker and papal spy named Roberto Ridolfi orchestrated a plot to overthrow Elizabeth that would return England to the Holy See and re-establish Catholicism with a clear line of succession, and it was hoped would end the Protestant heresy. Ridolfi's strategy was intricate. In 1571, the Duke of Alba, based in the Netherlands, was to invade the north of England with a force of 10,000 men and form an alliance with the Catholic English nobility, reigniting the flames of rebellion. The next stage involved the murder of Elizabeth by loyal Catholic nobles and the marriage of Mary Queen of Scots to Thomas Howard, Duke of Norfolk, who had previously been pardoned for his central role in organising the revolt of the Northern Earls. Once Mary and Norfolk had been crowned, England would be returned to the Catholic faith, and Spanish soldiers would ensure their safety. Ridolfi held secret talks with those involved in England, and after gaining their support, he left for Rome to seek papal approval for the plot. While Ridolfi was in Europe, he planned to meet with King Philip and the Duke of Alba to discuss the details of the plan. However, Ridolfi was known to be indiscreet and spoke of his plan to Cosimo de' Medici, Duke of Tuscany, who promptly informed Elizabeth. At the same time, Elizabeth's network of spies across Europe had been feeding back intelligence of a Spanish plot against her life that was gathering pace. As a result, Ridolfi's secretary Charles Bailey was arrested in April 1571 and was found to be carrying encrypted messages to Mary. Bailey was taken to the Tower of London, where he was brutally tortured on the rack to explain the cipher that would reveal the treasonous content of the letters and seal Ridolfi's fate. Bailey was later released from the tower and lived to be 85, dying in the village of Hulpe in Belgium. Ridolfi received word of Bailey's arrest while he was gathering support in Europe, but was powerless to act as the plot collapsed. Ridolfi would escape execution by never returning to England and became a senator in Florence, where he died in 1612 at the age of 81. After a trial lasting just one day, the Duke of Norfolk was sentenced to death for high treason for his part in the Ridolfi plot. Having previously been pardoned by Elizabeth for his role in the revolt of the Northern Earls, this time Norfolk was beheaded at Tower Hill in June 1572. The Ridolfi plot came at a time when England was on high alert against assassination attempts following Elizabeth's excommunication by Pope Pius V. It was now abundantly clear that Elizabeth faced great danger not only from abroad but also within her own kingdom. A further consequence of the Ridolfi plot was that it underlined the severity of the threat posed to England from Spain, given the Duke of Alba's presence in the Spanish Netherlands. Such close proximity of a known enemy of Elizabeth led to heightened security and suspicion of Spain. In response to the Spanish threat from the Netherlands, Elizabeth sought to forge a new alliance with the French that would provide her with greater security on the continent. Following the failure of the Ridolfi plot, the authorities remained on high alert for suspected plots and potential Catholic rebellion. Therefore, the Pope organised Catholic priests to be smuggled into England to fan the embers of English Catholic resistance to the Elizabethan settlement. The priests would be kept hidden by loyal Catholic families across rural England, away from major towns and cities. Their role in hiding was to carry papal messages from the continent into England, as well as to hear confessions and celebrate Mass in secrecy. As suspicion of Catholics grew after the Ridolfi plot was revealed, wealthy Catholic families came under surveillance from government spies, making the transportation of priests incredibly dangerous, as homes were frequently raided to find the priests. The penalty for Catholic priests being caught in hiding ranged from imprisonment to execution by being hung, drawn, and quartered. This led to many families constructing hidden rooms within their homes to hide them during a raid, which became known as priest holes. Priest holes were cleverly constructed and could be hidden within existing walls or behind artificially constructed voids designed to appear in keeping with the rest of the room. Many estates across the country have surviving examples of priest holes to this day. By 1581, new government legislation was introduced in an attempt to stamp out any further Catholic plots against Elizabeth. For example, priests that were caught converting English subjects to Catholicism were now committing the serious capital crime of treason. Additionally, fines for not attending Church of England services were raised from an affordable level to a staggering £20, which would be enough money to bankrupt the majority of families in England. This shows how seriously Elizabeth and her Privy Council treated the threat of the Ridolfi plot. However, even with stronger preventative measures in place, Catholic plots were still being hatched in England and across the Channel. In 1583, a second plot was uncovered, this time organised by an English Catholic lawyer named Francis Throckmorton. This new plot was to centre on French assistance to overthrow Elizabeth, under the leadership of Mary Queen of Scots' cousin, Henri I, Duke of Guise. The plan would be financially supported by Philip II of Spain and involved the invasion of England by an army of French soldiers, led by the Duke of Guise. Once ashore, their first objective would be to free Mary Queen of Scots from house arrest. After releasing Mary, Elizabeth was to be deposed and held in the Tower of London, while Mary was to be crowned Queen of England at Westminster Abbey, thereby restoring Catholicism in England and returning religious governance to the Holy See. Francis Throckmorton, as the orchestrator of the plan, was to act as the intermediary between Mary Queen of Scots and other parties involved once the plan was underway. However, Elizabeth's Secretary of State, Sir Francis Walsingham, had already uncovered the plot through his network of spies, who had discovered incriminating letters and documents at Cowton Court, the Warwickshire home of Throckmorton, in October 1583. In November 1583, Francis Throckmorton was arrested and tortured to reveal the names of those who aided him. He was then tried at London Guildhall, where he was sentenced to death for high treason, and hanged at Tyburn in July 1584. Among the documents discovered at Cowton Court was a list of English Catholics that conspirators could turn to for support. This confirmed once and for all that there were those within the peerage in England that continued to pose a significant threat to Elizabeth. The aftermath of the Throckmorton plot was particularly hard for English Catholics. Many among the nobility who appeared on Throckmorton's list fled to Europe to evade capture by the authorities, while up to 11,000 were placed under house arrest and closely monitored. In 1585, a further Act of Parliament was introduced that made harbouring Catholic priests a capital offence. This would set the stage for the brutal reprisals and the stamping out of Catholicism in England after the Babington plot was uncovered in 1586. The Throckmorton plot highlighted the severity of the threat posed to Elizabeth and England should the French and Spanish join forces in the future. It also reinforced the view that as long as Mary Queen of Scots was in English captivity, she would always be the focal point for Catholic plots.